Okay, 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Youngstown City Council Safety Committee meeting. Today's date is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. The time is 3:03 p.m. And following the agenda, we'll start with the chairperson's roll call. My name is Anita Davis, Youngstown 6th Ward City Council and chairperson of the Safety Committee. And present, Councilman Jimmy Hughes, Vice Chair of the Safety Committee, Councilwoman Boston Adams Zach, committee member, Councilwoman Lauren McNally, and Samantha Turner. And I believe Julius is here, Councilman Julius Oliver, and Chief Robin Lees. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
The clerks.
Our clerks, Jennifer Ossinger, assistant clerk, and Valencia Merrill, clerk. Jen, did I get your title correct? Okay. The roll call being out the way, and this is a virtual meeting. We're going to start with Chief Lees. Chief, you were asked to provide information about the traffic stops, and you provided some email for us. And what I had, what I had requested was a complete, the statistics for the traffic and investigative stops for June and July of 2019. And I want the locations of each stop, the race and gender of the suspects, and the action taken. Okay, so let's go with the response on that item, please. And if anyone has any questions, chime in.
I think I responded in an earlier email that the data you requested isn't recorded. We can give basically the overall numbers which are provided, but in order to qualify it down to that other information, it would literally require what would be tantamount to a hand check. So what I did was provide you with, again, the overall numbers. The new CAD system is being ramped up to be able to do some of that additional information so that we, could draw down those kind of numbers. But the current system is not set up that way.
Okay, our present system is not set up the way to provide the location?
No, it won't show location. It draws down the numbers for the traffic stops and what the outcome was. Like I said, if you want location or any other details on the stop, like I said, it would require basically a hand check. So, and I'm not sure how long we keep those recordings, because we're into a year from the date the information would have come across.
So the system we have now, you're saying that our computer system, when they log themselves out, you're not able to pull that information of where they log themselves out at.
No, not as a general inquiry into the system. Like I said, it would require essentially a hand check where somebody would have to sit there and go back and listen to the radio tape to get that additional information.
Okay. So, and they would have to listen to the radio tape for each call. Is that it?
That would be, yeah.
Okay. And looking at the traffic citations, they could derive that information from the traffic citations themselves, though. They did a hand check?
No, what happens there is the stop is put out as a code, which again the CAD system records, and then the disposition of the stop is again recorded in a fashion that it can be again retrieved. So those are where we have those codes that they're entered into the system as the officer clears. The other information is all verbal radio traffic.
That's the verbal radio traffic, but the printed document, I'm looking at the numbers that were provided by Captain Mercer. And he said there were 348 stops for that 2-month period, 243 warnings, 55 citations, and 50 physical arrests made. So if there was a check made of the actual traffic citation, they can get that information from that citation, the name, the address, the race, and the location of all the stops. Same thing with the arrest reports.
Well, yeah, that would be correct. But like I said, that would require a hand check. This is the information we can draw down from the computer system that would be basically, the codes would be a 3010 for, again, clearing the traffic stop with a citation. And that's what we're getting. The other stuff would, like I said, you'd either have to listen to the radio tape or go back and try and find the citations or arrest reports.
Did anybody have, before I go forward, anybody have a question? Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. So you're saying that the new system that you are bringing in is going to be able to pull that information down?
The new system, we're looking at, how much more information that we could basically be able to draw down in the different categories.
Mm-hmm.
But again, whether it'll get down, you're not going to get all the details out of a computer log. So we're going to probably be looking at, some of the things that we would expect, or be using for things, let's say general statistical information, but also what, might be required for grants or, other applications. But, what we're looking at is that the details be put into the system so that it's retrievable as data instead of having to go back as we would here and look at the individual stops and try to, retrieve that information.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. Direct follow-up. So through the chair. So I want to, how do you, if you have, you're having traffic stops at a continuous pace in an area, and how do you target the services you provide as the chief or what your officers provide if you don't have any data, or if you're not collecting that data all of this time? Is it just on feel, or how have we been doing it? How have we been targeting our services up till now? And I know we get our data dump that, our monthly data dump where we have all of the crime that's happening in those areas. But as far as traffic stops, how do you target the service you provide, or you target the officers to a specific area to deter things from happening? How has that been going?
Well, we do. I think basically what you were referring to, we look at the crime analysis and for reported crimes and or tracking arrests and data like that. As far as individual traffic stops, I don't know that we've ever captured or tried to capture that. And I said, we'll look at it with the new system. But when you're looking at, the deployment of resources, traffic stops would really not factor into it.
Okay, so just a direct follow-up. So the traffic stops, the reason why you haven't tracked that data or dedicated resources to it, because traffic stops is small in the grand scheme of things. Is that what you're saying?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay,
Well,
Jimmy?
through the chair, not all, the beat cars themselves, they do have a responsibility. And when we used to track areas as well, I think it was the smallest thing we were doing, but we did track the area when the officer went out on the traffic, but not all of it was initiated through traffic, though, as a stop. See what I'm saying? So I think that, are we saying that we don't deploy because of we don't do it because we don't do traffic? Is that that's what you're saying, Chief?
No. it's basically, if we were looking to, again, focus on traffic enforcement, we're going to look at things like where crashes are occurring or where we have complaints. As far as, again, self-initiated traffic or investigative stops, that's not really something that we typically track geographically. You know, if the stop results, let's say, in an arrest or generates a crime report, yeah, then that's tracked. But as far as these self-initiated traffic stops and or investigative stops, no, we don't really track those. We're looking at it as something we might do with the new system, but it hasn't been done historically, no.
Jimmy?
But the system, I'm thinking, does track it, so where the officer went out.
I can't say that I don't think it does, but you know, I mean, I could follow up, but I really don't think we can show that where we can do like an overlay with a map or something like that, which we can do with the other information.
Well, to my knowledge, the old system did. I don't know what you're using now. I have to say that, you know, I have to admit that leastwise, but the old system did, and we were able to track it in census track, I believe it was called. And everything was set up into that. But
I got you, Samantha. Hold on beforehand. Jimmy, you were finishing up?
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that I was just a little confused about how we were separating tracking in one incident and not tracking in another by the same CAD system that's used to track. It tracks one, it tracks them all, you know. That's how it used to be.
Well, Chief, these numbers that Captain Mercer provided, how were they attained?
Well, we can draw down again from the system that there was traffic stop, and typically again that's going to show up in those clearing codes where, like I said, the 3004 is a traffic stop cleared with a warning. A 3010 is cleared with some type of citation or arrest. So you can draw those numbers down, checking into the system in that fashion. So that's basically what they did. As far as what Councilman Hughes is referring to, I'd have to do a follow-up with the captain and see if that information is again tracked geographically or by census areas, whatever the case may be. But for the information you were asking for, this is what we came up with initially.
Okay. Do you still have a traffic clerk?
Yes, we do. Well,
okay.
we will again starting Monday, but we were in this furlough where we were splitting the clerk's duties between various assignments.
Okay. Well, then I would ask you to have your traffic clerk, since we're talking about only 55 citations, and those citations are banded up together by day and then by month, and then they're left into a box unless they change the system, same system that they've had for 50 years. The clerk could go up there, and with only 55 citations to go to, she could pull up that information and have it for the next meeting. And also she could pull up the arrest reports. There were only 50 that you showed generated here. So they can pull up the arrest reports and by hand draw down those statistics.
I can see if they can do that. As I said, I'm not familiar with how far that goes into that area. So I'll make the inquiries Monday and see what we can do with that.
Please do so, because the public could come down there, request a copy of all that information, and just do dot and fill in check the boxes and doing the exact same thing that I'm talking about. Just pull up the paperwork and doing it by hand. So if your clerk is back, then have her take a look at it. Like I said, we're talking about only a total of 105 pieces of paper. If we're talking about citations and physical arrest, the arrest reports would be pulled up on the computer from that time period. And the citations, like I said, they would just pull out the box, the rubber banded in the traffic division. Okay, I appreciate that. If you could do that, Chief.
I'll take a look. Yes.
Okay, because we
Okay.
have to be able to, without this, how do you know whether or not someone is targeting whether or not an officer is indeed targeting someone based upon race or gender or anything else? If you're not looking at that, if you're not tracking that, how do we know if there's a problem or not with any officer who may have a problem of any sort? If we're not tracking that, we don't know that there's a problem.
Okay.
Sam, you had your hand up?
I just had a follow-up to what you're asking, and maybe this is for Anita, you're saying that this information is available to us in some form. We just have to pull it from off of the slips and look at it that.
On every traffic citation, there's the name, the address, the location of where if we're talking about a traffic citation or any kind of citation, you have to have the address, as the chief well knows, the physical description, because that all has to go inside there in case the person doesn't show up for court. Bench warrant is issued not just by name, but by physical description as well. So they would have the race, the gender, the age, etc. But the chief could be correct that the computer may not be able to draw it up directly by that, but with this limited number of citations and physical arrests, that's over a 60-day period. That's less than 5 a day. So, our traffic division, the traffic clerk should be able to, and the chief will look into it, I'm sure.
Okay. I thought we weren't tracking it, but we're not tracking it. We're not logging it, I should say. We're not logging that data, but the data is available, so he can log it.
So it could be tracked.
Okay.
If you have Jimmy, is your hand up? You're muted, Jimmy.
That'd be a negative. No, that was something else. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Did anyone else have any questions for the chief on this item? Anyone?
I guess.
Chief, Councilman Hughes.
I guess I do. Is there any? I'd like to ask the chief. Is he concerned at all about targeting profile? Of just singling out individuals to maybe wrongly or rightly, or is that any concern, or what's his position on pretextual stops? The following somebody till they make an error, turn signal error or something, and then stop them to go further to search the car to try to see if they want it or something in that light, if there's any weapons or something like that. Like, what's his position on pretextual stops? Where someone's really not doing anything and the officers just select them and for further investigation, investigation rather.
Chief?
Okay, through the chair. I don't have any real concerns about profiling or targeting to answer that part of the question. I look at the reports every morning. Do we have folks that are a little more proactive than others? Absolutely. We've got people that are going to go out there and, again, chase after bad guys. Again, as you've noted, 5 arrests or citations a day doesn't, necessarily seem extreme. The issue with pretext stops, the last I remember was that the Supreme Court said that, any pretext for a traffic stop is really allowable if the officer's original intent is something other than the traffic violation. Now, to follow that up, where we're dealing with the level of gun violence we are in particular neighborhoods, we do ask the officers to be proactive, make stops, discover whether people are wanted or there's other activity going on, particularly firearms violations or drugs. So, you know, my position is we want them to go out there and make investigative stops and traffic stops that, again, turn into seizures of guns or wanted individuals. So I think that's really part of the job we should be doing.
Councilman Hughes, if you have a follow-up before I ask Attorney Limbian a question.
Well, the only thing that I understand what he's saying and his position on it, but there's a lot of climate going around that exposes individuals. A lot with the pretextual stop in the same Supreme Court case that he was saying, which is kind of old, to tell you the truth, but the same case is what he's referring to. The individual was identified from other than a traffic. There was no violation. They would even go to a point to follow a person. And I think the original case was they followed the person until they made a violation. And so they already selected the individuals they wanted to stop. I would think we need to relook at that, you know, as are we getting the benefit from it, as well as exposing certain individual class of individuals, because as he says, he's talking about certain neighborhoods, and certain neighborhoods, you know, who are they stopping? And so if you're going to stop somebody, you're going to make your mind up, you're going to stop someone that has done nothing, you know, and you looking for some reason to it's just targeting it, and it seems to be somewhat unpopular at this stage of the game of what we're doing. That's just my opinion about it, and I would think that I think the chief should rethink that. Maybe look at it, you know, let a non-violator go in peace. You know, if he's not violating anything, you know, we shouldn't be. I don't think we should, but again, I think he should rethink that. That's just my opinion, though.
Samantha, and then I think Lauren, did you have your hand up, Lauren? Okay. Samantha?
Thank you, through the chair. So Chief, so you're saying, so you use your crime analysis information and numbers to target your traffic stops in hopes, if it's in a bad area, in hopes to build cases against individuals in that area? Is that what you're saying?
Chief?
We, through the chair, we depend on the crime analysis to be able to focus enforcement activities in general. If you look at our beat map, what you would see is there's a heavier concentration of officers on the south side than pretty much anywhere else in the city. Again, that was a result of our crime analysis and a partnership with YSU Math and Stats a few years ago to do an analysis of, you know, again, our activity and where our resources would be best deployed. So, you know, as a result of that, which took us, I want to say 6 or 8 months to get the final product, we, again, deploy resources based on that activity, and it's weighted accordingly for more serious crimes as opposed to just sheer numbers.
Samantha? Done?
I'm okay later.
Attorney Limbian? Jeff, are you on the? Yes, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So what the Supreme Court, according to the Chief Lees, the Supreme Court has allowed pretext traffic stops, and there's no problem with that?
Well, that's a loaded question and has many facets to it.
Well, I mean,
I can.
Well, excuse me, Robin, did I misstate what you said?
No, basically, you know, again, the Supreme Court, to simplify it, said that an officer can make a traffic stop based on a violation, even though he has an underlying motive to look for other criminal conduct.
Okay, Attorney Limbian?
I take the chief at his word. What I would like to do is get the case citation. Which, if I might ask the chief directly, what case you're talking about, sir?
Through the chair, Jeff, I couldn't say offhand. I depend a lot
Okay.
on that Ohio search and seizure book by Katz,
Gotcha.
and I'd have to go in tomorrow and look at the particular area and give you the citation they used. But my last reading of it was that. And again, I'm not talking about situations as Councilman Hughes was referring to, where the officer follows the person around until a violation is committed. It's simply where they observe a violation, and again, the underlying desire is to discover a more serious crime. So, and like I said, that's to us is proactive. We do it again, typically in areas where again, the crime analysis indicates particularly where there may be gun violence and related crimes.
Through the chair, Councilwoman Davis,
Yes.
if I might have an opportunity to review the specific language of the Supreme Court case, and I could do a very a quick synopsis of a memo for you and other members of the board of the committee.
That would be perfect. And then if you email it to Valencia, she'll make sure that other members of council get copies of it. And I would
Sure.
appreciate that, because following up on what Councilman Hughes says, the idea of it's a high problem crime area, and therefore they're going to make increased traffic stops. That's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, where it's a high crime area, so we're going to start stopping people looking for stops that we might not otherwise make. It was in a different neighborhood, okay? The person would slide by, but because it's a quote high crime area, and I understand high crime, what's meant by that. When it's that high crime area, you're going to be getting mostly minorities. And so I'm going to want to, Chief, you're right. We do have high crime areas, but they are also high crime because it is a targeted area. Besides the fact that people call out, but if you make stops on Hillman Street, on Midlothian and Market, or things like that, and then you come and you find something, but if that person is doing that same kind of traveling over on Mahoning and Bella Vista, and they're not stopped for that LA turn. Follow?
Well,
So,
through the chair, I might.
yes, please, Chief, please.
A lot of the data is really related to crimes that have occurred where there's been a felonious assault in the way of a shooting, a stabbing, or a murder. And that's what drives, as I said, the numbers are weighted accordingly. And that's
Okay.
what drives the analysis as far as, areas we might focus on where there has historically been gun violence. The number of stops that we make and seize a weapon or make an arrest, I think would be, a minor factor in how that plays out.
Chief, I have to ask, let me ask you, when you talk about gun violence, you're not talking about shot spotter and just gunfire going off. You're talking about an actual physical felonious assault.
Yeah.
Right?
Through the chair, that'd be correct, where we actually have a felonious assault or a murder.
Well, that data, if you are able to pull that up and everything else, that will help answer some of the questions, whether or not we do indeed have a problem with any kind of racial profiling going on in the city that's not been addressed. Is that okay, Councilman Hughes?
Yeah, I think a couple things here, if I could just comment. Yes,
Go ahead.
I don't disagree with that, but the pretext of stops that the Supreme Court is referring to, that's what, 30, 35 years ago that was decided. It was a long time ago, and it's back and forth. And it's been, and there's other abuse that it has been abused in the sense of what we're talking about, even up to modern day. That's more the point I want to bring out, and there's no checks and balance of an officer who wants to identify, and we're doing everything, even in this conversation, by saying gun violence and everything else, but it's male blacks that's target here, because male blacks is the apex of the gun violence, and as they track it by their numbers and that back and forth, whether whether the recipient or the giver of it. So that if you're going to use pretextual stops to stop a person who's done nothing, you know, then what you're doing is you're using them to stop male blacks, because that's what the whole, that's what his data is going to show, that the apex is male black. But there's a ton of male blacks that aren't really, aren't criminals. And the majority of them are not criminals. I should say that, you know, but if we're using the stop and we're saying that's doing our job by doing it, you know, and not even giving a consideration to look at adjusting that, you know, because again, you're stomping a lot of individuals, and not all the individuals are going out on it. They'll stop you for a violation and they don't report that we're going out. And it's mostly the profile units that are doing it, you know. But I'm just basically saying, and I'm hoping that we listen, that it could be, there's some, if you got a program that's set up to eventually stomping male blacks, or young male blacks, or old male blacks, but male blacks, and that's what it is, you know, and you're not going to look at it and see if it's being abused or if it can be adjusted, or if one of my constituents or one of the citizens of Youngstown or visitors of Youngstown can't drive through the community in peace without being stopped by the police because you're looking and you follow them. It's like going to a Walmart and get the floor stopper on your tail because you walk through the door. It's the same thing, you drive down certain streets. I just ask again, and I'll ask it again, there should be some consideration in re-looking at that, and maybe Jeff can make a comment on that while he's looking up a case to determine what is validity. The case exists, there's no problem with that. Most of us all know that that's it, that that's what it's all centered about when they did that. That in another case that allows them to stop people in neighborhoods that have high crime or so high crime. The Supreme Court ruled on that as well. You know, certain movement elevated up from minor threat level to serious threat level. Well, all I'm saying is that should we still be going on this system that has seemed to, in my opinion at least, have showed some extreme abuse and toward a certain class of individuals, and I say again, young male blacks or male blacks, you know, and as being a legitimate police function.
Okay, great. So
if Jeff can comment on that, you know, if and not even looking at that as being a potential area for us to look at.
Jeff, what's the exact question for Jeff? Jeff, are you there?
Through the chair, yes, I am here. Within the memo, you'd like me to comment on the appropriateness of targeting? Is that what I'm led to understand?
Jim?
We're trying to manifest probable cause for a arrest or to put an individual in jail where there was none before. There was no mere suspicion, there's no probable cause, you know, and so, but we as a police department is trying to manifest that when we target black males or people's period, but when we target them for a violation that they aren't involved in, that never happened, that's not going on. We are, you know, I understand about invasion, I understand about this, but that being said, you know, the search and seizure or that he mentioned about cats, those laws, and Lisa Eisenhower has changed for confiscating and searching vehicles and whatnot. So to me, the pretext stopping should also have changed, you know?
Okay. All right, okay, Jim, so Jeff, would you please take a look at the current search and seizure rulings and provide that as well?
Through the chair, I certainly will. I'll take it from the Supreme Court case and then cases that have been highlighted those procedures and those stops since that Supreme Court case, and,
Okay,
and try to give a historical perspective, and then maybe where we should go based on signals set by the court.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Basha, you had your
Thank-
hand up.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. This is a question directly for Chief. I would assume that there is a way to track grievances that people or constituents may have. Is that true? Well, okay, if we're able to, if we do track grievances, is there a way to be able to sort through the complaints and the data to kind of like categorize what the reason for the grievances, to see if, you know, I guess to track to see if there's a lot of complaints, whether somebody feels they were inappropriately stopped for this reason or that reason?
Before you answer, Chief, so Basha, you want to know about an internal affairs complaint?
Yes.
Okay, Chief?
Through the chair, yes, we've actually had a number of those type of inquiries in the recent past. We track all the complaints we get on an annual basis. We evaluate them. We look at them for direction as far as whether it's, you know, we think we need to address an issue through training or policy changes. And like I said, it's reviewed on an annual basis. The other thing is just, you know, while Councilman Hughes and you were talking earlier, I did some quick math here. And when you're talking about 348 stops over a 2-month or approximately 60-day period, I'm coming up with 5.8 stops for a 24-hour period when we would typically have 3 shifts, 36 officers on average out over that, you know, 24-hour period. Something less than 6 stops on a 24-hour period. I don't think we're getting into an area where there's any abuse or targeting going on. Like I said, we can check internal affairs complaints that, you know, would reveal any issues there as well. The other thing is that, you know, one of the things I did when I came in as chief was I increased the amount of supervision in the patrol division because the department was going through a transition where we had a lot of younger officers, and I felt additional supervision was necessary. The sergeants keep a pretty good eye on this, and you know, any patterns for particular officers would show up pretty quickly. We had one officer in particular that we felt was getting a little extreme with the probable cause for traffic stops, and he had been counseled about it and has since left and joined another police department. So it was kind of a non-issue at this point. But, you know, we do see that. We're a larger department, but we're not so big that we don't know, you know, our officers on an individual basis. And again, with 4 sergeants on each shift, you know, I feel keep a pretty good eye on those things. And when those kind of patterns emerge, we address those.
Jim, anybody else? Chief, I didn't even address I made a point not to talk about the 6 because, you know, frankly, I saw the 6 and thought that was a low number for a 24-hour period. You know, 6 in a whole day for an entire city, as if there aren't other traffic violations going on, the regular ones, the normal everyday speeders and things like that, versus the rolling stops and things like that. I mean, so I purposely did not address the fact that about the 6 stops. I just want to know the data within the 6 stops, whether or not within those 6 stops, if it's imbalanced or not. That's what I'm seeking, is whether or not it's imbalanced or not. Anybody else? I see. Okay, then are we done with this item? If we are done with this item, let's go on to item number 2. The next item, which is the cost about the body cameras, Chief. Have you looked at it?
Yeah, obviously I sent it out to you, so yeah, I saw it.
But that was kind of like a, you know, rhetorical question. You've looked at it, Chief. And I've looked at it too. I think everyone else has. These the numbers for it's $947,000 for the Motorola system, 838 almost for the Axon system, and which includes the data, the first two, and the digital ally at 838,000. Correct? Chief?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
that's based upon 100 individuals, and that is a one-time cost. Correct? At those figures.
Through the chair, not really.
Okay, then
The-
explain that to us.
Yeah, the storage and licensing are going to be an annual cost that we'll be looking at. I think an estimate there would be something in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $100,000 a year that would be incurred as a result. Now, the Motorola system, I'm not real sure there, because I've had some conversations with Chief Gavalier. Austintown recently purchased a Motorola system, and I think they're doing the storage in-house, and they're accomplishing that. But I believe there's still going to be annual licensing and maintenance that you're going to run into. You don't buy anything anymore that is connected to a computer or again a digital database that you're not going to end up paying annually for the licensing and or maintenance. So there's going to be some continuing cost.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody have a question on this item about the cameras before I ask some other questions? Anyone? So Chief, you said about $60,000 to $100,000 for the licensing and storage fees. But isn't it
And that's
annually?
through the chair. That's just a guesstimate. It, like I said, where the storage is actually taking place on site, or we're not paying for the storage, it could be less. But I can't give you just a quick estimate. We pay about $250,000 a year right now in licensing fees for the again, the computers and the various systems that we have currently. So I would expect that there would be a cost there, but it would be a sliding cost, I think, depending on whether or not the storage is taking place in-house, and again, depending on the maintenance agreement and licensing issues.
When you put down the cost for the radios and you include the storage, there should have been there's a breakdown somewhere. What's the cost for the radios? I mean, for the cameras, correct? I apologize. What's the cost for the cameras alone?
I think what you're looking at here is a startup cost, which you would be looking at the first year. As far as the continuing cost.
I want to know what is the cost of the cameras, and then what is the cost of the storage? Because it is foolish to come here time and again and never have the breakdown of the cost for the storage. And I was getting, because this is not the first time we've had this conversation, and we've yet to get the cost of the actual cost for storage. There's got to be a range that you have after this been addressed for probably the third time. So that needs to be gotten to us. We know the cost for. Go ahead, Chief.
We'll ask for what the annual maintenance and licensing, and possibly whether or not storage would be involved there, and we'll get that cost. But like I said, I know what Austintown's experience is, and I want to say that's about $63,000 a year annually on that Motorola system. But I'm sure, I would guess that the proposals would have had that somewhere in them, or we can ask for that to be broken out.
Yes, that has to be, because if every year we come with the price for the cost of renewing the shot spotter, every year we come with the price for the computer system, and its data storage and storage of the data. Every year we get those things. When you come to us and ask us through legislation to approve these licensing things, so you do need to get us this information, because these cameras have got to come to Youngstown, Ohio. So please get that to us by way of an email to Valencia, and she will forward it to all of City Council for us to consider for any further action. And Jimmy or Basha from the committee, anything? Any other questions?
I
Jim?
through the chair, this thing with Austintown and their Motorola, Austintown used the same system for their 800 unit radio. Are we saying that this is a separate, this is not joined with that, the cost that they're saying? The cameras and the radio system, is this more, that cost is not, I mean, is that what Austintown is telling you? That's strictly the camera cost, nothing to do with their radio?
Through the chair, that would be correct. And the camera cost has been separate. And in fact, we are part of that 800 radio system now ourselves. And that also is part of the reason I think they looked at a Motorola system. The CAD system that we're currently undertaking is through a company called Spillman, but it's again a Motorola-based system. So there's a certain desire where you have one vendor you're dealing with on all these different levels to again make the equipment more compatible across the board.
Okay, Jim?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, so Chief, get that breakdown for the cameras and then for the annual storage and any licensing things, and get that to us, like I said, by way of an email. And I'm not looking for this by next month's meeting. I want it well before that, because by now, probably Captain Simon, maybe one of them should have already looked at this and looked at the cost. Okay, so I would appreciate that, because the day of not having cameras is got to be in our past. Okay.
Okay, we'll get that.
Thank you. And now forgive me, I got to pull my glasses down to see my agenda. Any other questions about the body cameras before we go on to the community policing and the scope of services? Any other questions about body cameras? If not, let's go on and get a review of the scope of services for the community police officers. Chief, give us a brief overview, and we do have your thing that just sent out.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, I think, a little bit, but the document we sent out was basically written up as the original proposal for the community police, and it really is pretty much stands for what we're doing today. The only difference being we've shrank the community police down to 4 officers from 7, simply to maintain staffing in the patrol division. So you have 1 officer, for each side of town, as opposed to 1 for each council ward. But basically, when it comes down to the goals and mission of the group is to address, quality of life problems within their neighborhoods that they're assigned to, and using, again, non-traditional responses to neighborhood problems, and community engagement, but also the resources of, again, the various city and social service agencies that help provide those things, whether it's, code enforcement or, a dog warden or YNDC or our SERVE program, or any of these other resources. The other thing is that they do provide a ready resource for other things that come up. One of those that, would be current is that the Park and Rec is hosting these daytime summer camps at Crandall Park and over at Homestead. So we've had the community officers assigned to those locations to work with the folks there. And, so they have a presence there, as well as, other events that come up that we send them to. I mean, it might be anything from, let's say, the Juneteenth celebration to, parades or other things that take place downtown where we need to pull folks for special events. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, if you will, as if anybody has any particular questions.
Yeah, I do, Chief. So the community police officer, when they're down wherever you said they were going today, are they doing their as a law enforcement role, or is it, what's their role? What's the purpose of being there?
Well, it's really multi-purpose. I mean, they are police officers, so they're gonna perform a law enforcement role when called on. But again, it's more of a problem-solving approach to situations in the neighborhood, because again, our call volume and again, our regular officers are in a system that's driven by 911 calls, and it's not always easy for them to return and follow up on things that might be, say, a festering issue in a neighborhood. The community officers have the ability to do that and return the next day, and again, work with residents individually or block watches, community groups, and the like. So they again are a multifaceted kind of response, but with a focus on community engagement to solve problems.
Well, Chief, and then I'm gonna get to some, Samantha, I'm gonna let you go ahead before I ask my other question to the Chief. And excuse me 1 minute. Jim, could you take over for a minute? I have to just excuse myself for 1 brief minute.
Yes,
Thank you.
you were saying, Samantha?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Just on that point real quick, the community police officer is assigned to Crandall Park or Homestead Park, with the majority of the children are minority children, low to moderate income. And this police officer is there for the duration of the day in full uniform.
The first week.
Go ahead.
Was that a question?
I actually, I wanted to finish that before I finish the question. So that right there, and then maybe you've changed it since, but that is why I want to ask you, what is your stance on community policing, and how are you pushing community policing forward in our community? Because I keep hearing that it's important, but it's not connecting with the action. So if you could explain that to us a little bit, just your stance and how you feel about it.
Okay. Well, to answer your first inquiry, with the day camps, we had the officers there throughout the day for the first week. In talking to the Parks Director, Dawn Turnage, what we've done is we've kind of ratcheted back a little bit on that, where the officers stop by the locations on a regular basis, and again, for whatever time they need there, and see what's going on. On days that they have events, the officers will be there throughout the time that the particular event is taking place, where they're having some of the recreational things in the way of like the snow cone truck or the video truck, whatever else they're doing through the course of the program. So they are not there constantly at this point, but the first week we had them there all the time. The rest of your question was, I think, was a little vague. What are you looking for in particular there?
So before that part, when they do come to the park, even if it's for part of the day and they have to do other things, they are there dressed in full uniforms. It's their policing, and really, as community police officers, they're there to build relationships and get to know these, families and children. It just looks different from. It doesn't mesh well. But I'm asking you, what is your stance on community policing? And when you came in as chief, what was your stance on community policing, and what do you think we need to do as a community to move it forward as the police chief? Okay,
through the chair, in response to that, when I came in as chief, there wasn't any community policing. We had it off and on for a number of years, and when I was working with Chief Bush, I was working very closely with him. It became apparent that, we continually got, I guess, complaints from a lot of the council people about particular things in the neighborhoods, and we would keep trying to address those through the patrol division and or occasionally special units. It occurred to me at that time that if we brought back community policing and then structured it where we would get it more ingrained into the neighborhoods and partner the community officers with council people and focus on each council ward and those neighborhoods within the ward, and have the officers engaged in the, like I said, the neighborhood or community programs and block watches, which was another thing too. You know, what I observed in the past was you would send the patrol car for the area that the block watch was having their meeting, but frequently those officers would have to leave as a result of getting a call for service. I felt if we had a freestanding unit specifically designed to, again, work with the folks in the neighborhoods and address those kind of lingering or problematic issues, that, you know, that would be more effective in the long run. The other thing was that we weren't going to kind of just do this as we had in the past. I was able to get the Department of Justice to send us a team of basically 3 in to go over the tenets of community policing and engagement, and essentially do training with our officers. Then what they did was a train the trainer, where the community officers were basically given all of the information and the training, and then in our annual in-service training, the community officers imparted that to the rest of the police department to try to undertake and again return to this philosophy of you know, more community-oriented policing and trying to build relationships where we can. So that's been taking place for the last, you know, at this point about 6 years. So I feel that the program has been relatively effective in that, you know, we're able to address a lot of these problems in the neighborhoods that aren't necessarily high priority criminal issues, but those issues where you have the, you know, the barking dogs, the blue tarps on the roof, the zoning violations, the, you know, issues with the bad neighbors and those kind of things, which, like I said, are the problems that just don't go away, but are not necessarily 911 type issues. So that's, I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Basha.
Thank you, through the chair. I think this is half comment, I guess, half question. The community policing program started upon some of our first term. So in 2016, I believe the previous council kind of started this program. And from my understanding, the program was kind of mirrored or was following what Reading, Pennsylvania did. And that's why they bundled and made that quality of life ordinance with those 19 individual ordinances. And I believe that's kind of how it started, that they were doing those issues. And then I think it kind of transitioned more so to now, even as you mentioned, Samantha, trying to form those relationships with our, you know, with our community, with our constituents. And just a quick comment, myself and Councilman Davis and part of Councilman Oliver's ward, we have Officer Ott. She, regarding the uniforms, she sometimes does wear her full uniform, but if we're having, well, at least in my ward, if we're having a particular event that was scheduled in advance, whether it's like, you know, picnic or things of, you know, that nature, she does not show up in full uniform. She has like a polo and she wears slacks or whatever kind of pants they are, but it's not full police uniform. Thank you.
Samantha.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, through the chair. So in your response, it was important and you brought it in. So it's safe to say, Chief Leeds, that you believe that this is an important measure in crime reduction. And of course, in your mission, it says to provide exceptional service to the residents. So that community policing program is essential. Yes?
Through the chair, I believe so. It's one of the priorities, you know, as we hopefully start hiring some people. I want to get it back up to its original staffing of 7 officers and again, get it functioning the way we kind of had it originally designed. Unfortunately, I feel with just the 4 officers, they're running around quite a bit trying to address a lot of things that, they are always seem to try and catch their breath, basically going from one thing to another. So for me, it will continue to be a priority while I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so through the chair, with the direct follow-up, you
Go ahead.
said in the beginning, most of your officers are concentrated on the south side due to criminal activity. And this has been the case for years. Can you explain to us what community policing measures you've taken to help reduce the crime in that area? How have you utilized this program you have to help reduce the crime in that area instead of targeting more and more and more, and instead of just targeting more and more and more police to that area?
Chief?
Well, through the chair, the community police, and at the end of the month, Councilwoman, I was going to send you their monthly, basically a spreadsheet that tracks their activity. But it's some of the things they're doing are not really as measurable as I would like them to be, as far as where the officers have relationships with individuals or groups, and they're able to correct, again, problems in the neighborhood, and or they're feeding intelligence up the line to whether it's the detectives or the vice squad or another special unit to take action on a particular problem. So what you're asking for in the way of measures, we track some of the traditional things that will identify, like how many block watches they have attended, how many neighborhood programs they participated in, whether or not they've made arrests or issued tickets. One of the things that they do get very involved in is the red tagging and the identifying of these vacant houses where there's problems, and or again, code violations that are a problem within the neighborhood. So that kind of covers it, I guess.
Chief, no, hold on. Chief, I do have a question, because so often when I've called down about various complaints about cars and things like that, and then it's passed on to the community officer. Okay, that's all well and good that we have a community officer, but we still have patrol officers out there, and not everything needs to be passed on to the community officer, because what are patrol officers out there doing if all quality of life things are just about put onto the community officers, and as opposed to patrol officers who could take the same action, because the community police officers were not supposed to be a special unit. It was supposed to be the entire department when community policing was first begun. So I need to, I'm just making a comment now. I don't want it to always be put off to the community officers when they got patrol officers going up and down the street, and if there's a car that needs to be tagged, then they need to tag it and tow it, and not pawn it off. And I said the word on purpose, and not pawn it off onto the community police officers, because they do indeed have enough to do. Okay, that's my comment. Basha, Samantha, and then Lauren, no? Yep, okay, Samantha, let me have Lauren go because she hasn't got anything in yet. Lauren?
Oh, I guess a comment to go along with that, Anita. I agree. I feel like the community police are sometimes used as people that the rest of the police department kind of can go to, or and they get pulled a lot for things that aren't community policing related directly. And I agree that they do have a lot to do. And for instance, the program this summer at the parks, well, I think it's great that they're involved in that program because it fits their alignment. I also think that, maybe that's something that should be worked into their long-term plan rather than spur of the moment and cuts into whatever they had scheduled going on, just because I know that we do rely on them and code enforcement relies on them and the health department relies on them. And it's a great program and I want it to succeed and grow instead of being cut back. So that would be my only comment. I hope that we get to a point where it's back up to full capacity and it can do more of what it's intended to do. Because I think it has been successful in the 4, 5, 6 years we've had it so far now. But now that we've had it for so long, we should be
Expanding it?
Developing it to a more sophisticated level. And I realize, we're also, there are other factors, like our police department is much smaller now from a head count point than it was 4 to 6 years ago. So you have to take that into account. But at the same time, what's the point of having a program if it's not able to get better or continuously evolve, I guess?
Okay. Samantha and then Jimmy.
Yes.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why are you making faces?
Go ahead, Jim.
My comment is this. I think that it doesn't appear that us as council, and what your constituents want. Your constituents want to see more community police. We need more community police. We want more community police. At the last safety meeting, we were warned that if we cut overtime, not safety meeting, budget meeting, we were warned that if we cut the overtime budget, we're gonna lose community police. We're gonna lose services that's being provided. Now we're being constantly told that we gotta have, the police department has to have these numbers, they gotta have this amount of money, and when they don't get it, we're not gonna get anything that we want, the citizens want, and everybody else wants. If you get all kinds of training with the community police, then they should be also retrained with our block peoples. Our council should be involved in what's going on with the community police training so that we know. Now you're looking, what's it, 20, I don't know what year he said he started, but the point still being is that this is something in general, I guess I'm trying to say is that when you're told that you got to give me X amount of money, you have to give my staff up to, council set the staff of the police department. Council set the manpower structure of the police department and everything else. And that is true. And the budget of the police department. We can't continually go and say, this is a genuine response when we get that we're doing these things because my staff is low. You cut my overtime budget, so you're not going to get it. This can't go, and we got to figure out a way to send that message proper way. And if we don't need lessons as to what the community police does, we've already seen that. To say that we're not all going to get a community police, I think we should have 2 or 3 community police officers in each ward. But put that aside. That's just me. I'm not telling you what I did and what I didn't do, and I'm not trying to build up anything. But we was at the last finance meeting. I know this is not it, and Councilman Oliver says that's the most important thing that he thought he wanted. Whatever he could do to get more, he wanted more. There was his remarks similar to that. Don't quote me on it. I feel bad for it. But instead, the reply was, don't cut this overtime because you won't even get what you got. So we can't allow this to continue. And again, staffing levels in the police department is the job of council. We set that, And so if we set it the way it is, that's the way it is, And he need not threaten us and take stuff from us and not be held accountable for those kind of remarks. I'm just saying, that's it. Got nothing else to say about it.
Okay. Chief, did you want to have a response before I go to Samantha? If not,
Yeah, through the chair, it was Councilman Hughes referring to me as threatening to take services away? I don't really remember that conversation.
I'll refresh it. When we said we were reducing the overtime budget by $100,000, and you said, well, services are going to be cut. And that was your response. Okay, that was your response, that services would be cut. Not that you would look to see if there could be an adjustment within the budget. Your immediate response, and that's what Councilman Hughes is referring to, your immediate response was cut service. Something's gonna be cut. Not, I'll take a look and see where I can make an adjustment without cutting a service. And your immediate response was, you're gonna cut services because you lost $100,000 in the overtime budget. Okay, that's what he was referring to. If you want to respond to him on that.
Okay, to respond to that, ultimately a $100,000 loss in overtime is going to affect services one way or another, because we're going to obviously have to reduce something. Shifting people around, which we have done in the last few months, particularly right before COVID, in that was to bring people back from some, again, special units and other assignments. So have we shifted things around? Yes. At the same time, has service been reduced? Yes. So in order to adjust, you're going to adjust things. You're still going to affect services one way or another.
Chief, what service was cut?
Well, we took 2 people out of task force assignments. We reduced one in the crime scene unit, and again, the 3 officers that were reassigned from community police to patrol to fill those voids.
Okay, I understand that personnel were reassigned, but the service is still being done by those who are left there?
Well,
Yay?
certainly it's being done, but it's the same effect, if you will, for the community police. They're filling the roles of the vacancies that occurred as a result of the reassignment. So I think that's pretty easy to see where there's an effect there.
I think it's all, if the crime scene is being processed, it's being processed. I don't think the crime scenes are not being processed. If we have a homicide, it's been accomplished. Maybe not by as many people. Maybe instead of having 3 people processing the crime scene, a homicide scene, or 1 person, or 2 people, maybe you only have 1 person doing a homicide, as opposed to having 2 or 3. But it's still being done, and I'm sure with the level of professionalism that our guys have, it's being done correctly. I don't have any doubt about that. It can be. I have no doubt that they're getting the job done. Whose hand was up next? Julius?
Thank you, through the chair. And if somebody asked this question, Samantha, you was waiting, right? Okay. I don't know if you guys asked this question already. I've been in and out, but Chief, right? Y'all could just stop me if you already asked it. What's the difference between the community police officers' roles apart from a regular patrol officer's role, and why aren't all of our police officers community police officers? Or if they are, you can explain that too. Did you guys already ask that? Sorry.
It was addressed. I did mention that originally community policing was not originally designed as a special unit, but as an overall department thing, long time ago. Now how it's evolved is another thing, but long ago, it was the whole department was supposed to be community policing oriented. Am I right, Councilman Hughes?
No, you're almost right. If you throw another long on there, the original community police was a special unit. We got a lot of money and they made it a special unit. They put up a sign up in the police department, anybody wants to be a community police officer, and they gave them special cars and radios back in there, you know, and they all had the better of everything else because they had the government money coming in. That was the first one. That was with Tony Longmire and their group, you know, when they first was community police officers. Rodney Lewis, Tony Longmire, that group. We had a group of them, I think, forget who was in charge of them, and they met outside the police station. They didn't have a building nowhere around there. So they were one of the first groups that done that. They were separated, but eventually we did go into a all police thing. And then we went to one, and that was, I think when Chief Foley first came in, he changed it over to an all police thing. Take that away, we had police officers, community police officers in a special unit going to special place they were meeting, and we had one in every council. That was the best thing that turned out to be. Everybody was satisfied, everybody was happy, and I think the community in the whole felt better, you know?
The reason I asked the question,
Go ahead, please.
through the chair, not to interrupt you, Jimmy, but the reason I asked the question is 'cause it's shown that in other cities and other parts of the country, when the entire police department have or are deployed as the community police, everybody, you know, crime is kind of affected differently. So what's the difference between the roles of the community police and a regular patrolman?
Hold on. That was for Chief Lees, I believe. Is that right, Julius, for Chief Lees?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, through the chair to answer the councilman's question, the philosophy of community policing was put out through the entire department. Now, can the entire department function at the level that our assigned community officers function at? No. We still are going to be driven by, 911 calls and the 911 system. The philosophy to get officers that would have the time and the ability to do follow-up, which again, the regular patrol officers frequently don't have time to do, was, part of the desire to have a unit specifically designed and not, running on 911 calls. And again, to function during the daytime and early evening hours to work with citizens and or, as was mentioned earlier, whether it be code enforcement, health department, and some of those things. The regular patrol officers, if they are dispatched to a situation where, let's say, the code enforcement is involved or health department or, a block watch, again, they're going to have to answer to higher priority calls and they're going to have to leave. The community officers have the ability to focus on a problem, do the follow-up, and again, see the problem through. Like I said, the regular patrol officers, while we do want them to embrace the philosophy of community policing and practice it when they can, is not always going to be the case because, again, they are driven by the 911 calls and dealing with those issues.
Okay, follow up.
Oliver?
I get that. I just think if all of our police were at the same time they're answering 911 calls, and they're not always, all of them aren't always answering 911 calls. It's not like every cop in the city is deployed to a 911 call every second of the day. So in the times where, you might catch a patrol car, 2 or 3 in the parking lot somewhere talking to each other. I mean, I don't know if that's like some type of strategic meeting that they have to do. I see it all the time. But in that type of time, is it possible for all of our police officers, when they're not answering 911 calls, to behave in the manner of community police officers, where they're outside of their cars, they're engaged in the community, they're getting to know people? Because one of the biggest things we hear from our citizens, and I don't know if everybody discussed this already, is, you never see a patrolman out of his car. You really just, you might see the police going back and forth, but really engaging the community and getting to know people and making people feel comfortable, you don't really see that. So I don't know if you had an answer to that or not, but everybody, you could still answer 911 calls and still behave in the manner of a regular police officer with community police officer training and dealing with the community as a community police officer. I mean, I don't think that's not possible.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Chief.
The officers are encouraged to actually do that. The ability to do it sometimes is obviously reduced by, on a day-to-day basis. The other thing is could we do better at it? Absolutely. Is this something that, could be addressed in an in-service training and start to, revisit, okay, look, a few years ago, we all went through this and we talked about community policing and engagement, and, maybe we've started to stray away from it. Absolutely. And it may be time for a tune-up on that, as you said, Councilman. In fact, we encourage the officers, in particular where we have them downtown, is to walk around, talk to the merchants and, again, the business operators and that. Do we do as good a job out in some of the neighborhoods? Maybe not so much. But, again, like I said, that may be something we can revisit in future training.
Yeah, I would like to ask for that to happen, Chief.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Samantha, you had a quick question, because we have 2 more items that I'd like to get to before 5 o'clock, because we try to keep the safety committee meeting within the 2-hour slot.
Yes, actually, I just have a comment because a lot of the questions I had have been asked. Thank you, everyone. This is something that I've been kind of reading and looking over. So the City of Youngstown Police Department and our Community Police Division, our mission is to provide exceptional service to our residents and visitors. Our officers are committed to reducing crime and improving the quality of life for all by demonstrating unwavering pride in our performance. And if that is true, and we're going to live by our mission, community policing, I've heard everyone say, including you, Chief, that this is a needed program, and this program needs to be developed and really put in the forefront of how we police here in our community, that is complete with data and tracking. Furthermore, our department is small enough for this philosophy to go through all of our officers and be deeply immersed in the new officer training. I would like to see under your watch, Chief, and unfortunately, this is the time we want to see under your watch. All of the officers trained on the tenets of community policing, because community policing does not end at 4 o'clock, but my community police officer gets off at 4 o'clock. And problems happen all times of day, all night, on the weekend. And I think that if everyone had the ability to deal with and know how to deal with and know the people in their communities, instead of sitting in their cars, it would be a lot different for us here in the communities. I also want to put a challenge out to my colleagues to come January, because we keep hearing the budget, and thank you, Councilman Hughes. Come January, when we're asked to move funds around, we don't fall into that. We're going to have to cut this service. We're going to have to cut that service. The answer is, this is a priority. You've said it here over and over, Chief, and we've said it here. So just know that this is something that's a priority to our community, and it's essential for us to continue to grow and thrive. That is my comment on the matter.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Okay, anything else on the community policing? Chief, I think Samantha kind of summed it up, which is seeing the community policing, the tenets of the philosophy of community policing become embraced by the entire department once again, as opposed to just by the unit. Do I have that correct, Samantha? Just nod your head. Okay, all righty, thank you. Anyone else with a thing on community policing? Then we're going to go next to the use of force. And I'm just gonna open it up to anyone who has any questions about our use of force policy. And is everyone, I was gonna say comfortable with it? Samantha, you go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, so
Please go,
Chief, you explained the use of force policy at that town hall, and where you guys, I think you said it, police chief organization, statewide organization follows a statewide tenet. Can you just explain that for those of the people that weren't there? Just explain where you've got that use of force policy and the tenets that you live by when executing that policy.
Okay, through the chair, the basic training for the police officers is statutory, and it's controlled by the Ohio Peace Officers Training Commission. The standards for use of force are pretty well universal throughout the state. The use of force continuum, which was adopted by Ohio, and it's got to be 25 or 30 years ago, was something that really took off with an expert that fortunately was from Ohio and was taught on almost a national basis. A lot of the other parts of this are basically in line with what would be recommendations from the International Association of Chiefs of Police and standards there. So this isn't something that, the Youngstown Police Department, comes up with on their own. We follow state and national standards on this. There are some areas that obviously, we may address on our own and, for particular situations or, particular equipment we have versus, what somebody else might. But it's, like I said, it's a pretty standardized policy. And, the other thing I would add to that is that we do a review of our policy manual about every 2 years. And it's a changed and evolves according to, what, again, is the more recent standards or, what has evolved as a result of what may have been, any case law or any new issues that have come up. So I think we have, a good policy, but, nothing's perfect, and it's always, going to continue to change as anything else. It's a living document.
I'm going to say also that the notion of use of force, people think use of force and think force with a big F. Force is indeed a continuum. It is indeed a continuum. Okay, so it goes as little as, you apply force when you handcuff a person. That is force. I didn't say it was abusive force. It was a hard force, but that is a force. You're clipping the handcuffs on them. Okay, and I'm bringing up the thing about the handcuffs because so often I hear people talk. I hear the response, well, Youngstown, we haven't had officers shooting innocent people. In Youngstown, we haven't had recently beat down, officers physically abusing people. Okay, meaning where we have to settle those lawsuits that we had to do. So when we first came on council, okay. But what I have had complaints about is from more than one person was about the reason why I banned the handcuffs. It's about our officers taking people out their cars and handcuffing them without arresting them. They end up being let go. And that I don't think that is that covered, Chief, within the use of force policy that we have. Is that a practice to handcuff people without arresting them? I mean, what's the purpose of the handcuffing?
Through the chair.
Hold on, Bashi, are you talking to me? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Chief. Go ahead. Okay.
Through the chair, I think what you're referring to is investigative detention. And that does frequently happen where there's multiple persons involved and the officers are trying to control the scene. I read a lot of arrest reports where individuals are handcuffed temporarily and again put in the back of a car until the officers are able to sort out what has happened and what action needs to be taken. I would agree it's unfortunate, but these situations are frequently based in violence and quickly evolving, and the officers need to contain the situation and gain control to find out what happened before they take any further action. And that is commonly utilized as a technique to, again, kind of neutralize the situation and get a handle on it and sort it out. So that is, again, something that there are individuals who are detained briefly and then eventually let go as the officers figure out what's happened. But again, these are situations where the officers ride up and it's a chaotic situation and they're trying to, again, figure out what's happened and what action is going to have to be taken.
Well, this complaint that I had specifically was where the individual was handcuffed for officer's safety, a common thing that we hear heard in the past. But there was nothing that predicated a reason for the officer to think that they were not safe. There was no action taken, even according to the report that I saw, no action was taken on the part of the person who was handcuffed. They were simply, for officer safety, handcuffed. Now, there has to be more to it than just, I want to handcuff you because I don't feel safe. For no other reason than I don't feel safe. So,
well, through the chair,
does our policy address anything like that, or is that addressed within the annual training, Chief?
Through the chair, this would be again part of their basic training, and what I would say is rather than try and address this in kind of a blanket statement, I would say that for that situation that was described to you, I would think just call internal affairs and get a follow-up and get some detailed response to that, because like I said, I see this happen from time to time in reviewing the reports, but as far as the individual circumstances and the suggestion that it was unnecessary or something, that's how we find out that maybe we need to change or improve a policy. So I always encourage, if he has a question or complaint, bring it forward and let's get to the bottom of it, because it's hard to address some of these generalities.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I'll let them know. Does anyone else have any questions about the department's use of force policy? And I think the continuum of force. Anyone else before we go? Councilman Hughes, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
I don't have the one button that comes up to unmute and mute. I got to get the toolbar and do all of that. So I like to comment once, just real quick on your handcuff. I'd much rather see them get handcuffed than dragged around and thrown on the ground and all that other stuff, and even taken, worse or harsher matters, But if they was not so abused, the handcuff is a pretty good tool that they should continue to use. I don't think we should go too far down that road into if the officers, let's rule it. I think for the most part you rule the caution and you give the officer the benefit of doubt on that. But if it was doing it out of get back or hate or getting out of I don't like you, and they stop a guy for nothing, I can get that as being wrong. But other than that, that's not a bad tool for the police to use and to control the situation, in my opinion. But what I would say, the use of force, especially when it comes to deadly force, the whole system needs to be redressed, and my concern is this, in saying that, especially in light of what's going on around the country, and not just one city or two, but multiple things. the deadly force that's being used in Ohio is not really that much different in Youngstown as the chief says. He adopts the same policies that they put out. Now, our use of deadly force and our training for the use of deadly force is, to me, needs to be updated. We don't shoot to wound. We shoot to kill. We are trained to shoot to kill. If you can't shoot a man in the head, you can't be a police officer, you know, or a woman or a child, whoever you shoot. To qualify, you have to be able to shoot somebody in the head. You can't wound anybody. Shoot somebody in the leg. If all your shots was in the leg or all your shots was in the arm, you won't qualify. You can't be a police officer in Youngstown, you know, or anywhere in Ohio. I give that. But to me, that needs to be, we don't give warning shots. So we rather just shoot the person and, you know, and call it a day. And we have to shoot, in my opinion, it's called, I refer to it as shoot to kill, because you can't shoot to wound anyone. You can't, you know, and that whole system needs to be addressed. And that's where, when you're talking about what's going on in industry and is given it, I think this shoot to kill someone, it has to be some wiggle room that we can get away from that. And until we, and if obviously the chief is not concerned about that part of it, but I am. And I think that as a reform for the police department, so when you shoot an unarmed person and you're mandated to kill them, to try to kill them, you know, it makes no sense in that respect. You know, and when you have the capability of shooting somebody in the leg or even the buttocks, you know, if that becomes the case, but you are not trained to do that. And so my thing is that that's just one or some of the examples that I think that are being Ohio, Youngstown's, and maybe even the nation, because I'm not speaking about them, but I'm speaking about Ohio and Youngstown. You know, they need to look at those kind of things when you're using deadly force and when and back and forth. Now everything is on a Supreme Court case and everything is supposed to be this, but not, you know, and all they do is rule on action. And they give you this after the actions, but we still need to, that needs to be looked at. And we need to be concerned that it's not being looked at as a council.
Okay. Anyone else have any observations or comments about our present use of force? Chief, I'll let you know. I've already expressed my opinion about handcuffing people for officer safety. If you're handcuffing people for officer safety, Julius, I'll get you real quick. And they're always Black people. That's a problem. That's called profiling. Councilman Oliver.
Thank you, through the chair. So, you know, I had seen some like remarks and stuff on the news, but I just don't want the public to get the impression that, because what I'm hearing a lot is, you know, we don't, you know, Youngstown, we don't have the problems that these other cities have and things like that. And the thing is, we do have those problems. It's just they don't make the news. So, you know, is there anything being put in place for the, you know, the situations that are going on behind the scenes? I know I had some situations myself with a few officers and that didn't equate to, you know, the whole, you know, abuse of force type situation. But Chief, you know the situations I'm talking about, and it's easy for something to get embellished or something to get lost or anything like that, and then no real accountability happens to the officers. So I would just say there does need to be another look at, you know, policy changes amongst the department when it comes to use of force, because it seems like some of the younger officers, at least in my situation, are being trained by older officers that are showing them basically how to just bother people, how to pull up on somebody, and this is how you just punk a citizen. This is what you do, you know, because that's what happened in my situation, but the officer didn't know I was the city council person, which shouldn't matter because no city citizen should be treated that way. But if it could be something as small as what I had to deal with, then it seems like the abuse of force or use of force would get out of control real quick in a hidden situation, which we know we have. So how are we dealing with those secret issues, Chief? Unless it's, I mean, you probably can't answer it because it's a secret, but.
Chief, that was for Chief Lees. Is there a response that you're expecting from Chief Lees or?
No, I don't know how he would respond to that. It's just there are things happening within our police department that the public doesn't know about when it comes to interactions with the citizens that are causing people to say we don't have those problems when it comes to our police department. But any random person that might have had things happen to them in a traffic stop or any, it happens. It does happen, but it just doesn't make the news. So I just wanted to go on a record so people know, like you can't say those things don't happen within the police department in Youngstown, because it happens with certain officers and certain incidents. It just doesn't get on the news.
Okay, Chief Lees.
Through the chair, we've identified behaviors with particular officers, and there's a variety of things we do to try and address those problems. The key thing is, and I've said this in many public meetings, block watches, whatever else, if you have an encounter with an officer that, you don't feel it went right, or there was something wrong with it, or, the officer misbehaved, we want to hear about that so we can correct it. We don't want that kind of behavior to continue. And in the instances that the councilman has referred to, we did follow up on that, and we have taken corrective action where again, wherever we can. A lot of times, we start out with even professional counseling with some of the officers as a result of some questionable behavior. So I am always anxious to hear any complaints and have our internal affairs followed up to find out what exactly took place. And like I said, anywhere we see that there's a pattern in particular, that's what we want to know, so that again we can take disciplinary measures, or regardless how far that has to go.
Okay. Well, to Councilman Oliver, I think, I don't make any secret that I believe that we should have a review board, a citizen review, and what their authority would be is another thing. But there has to be a place besides internal affairs, besides policing themselves, judging themselves, and no one else seeing them judge. Okay, that's where the lack of transparency, I think, Julius, that you're kind of talking about, because people may not want to go to internal affairs because they don't think they'll get a fair shake. But even if they only can air their complaint, get it before a review board, and at least that review board might take a look at it, pass it on to an internal affairs, but at least there's transparency out there if we had some sort of review board. So we can take a look at that down the road. I don't know of any police chief that's ever been in favor of a citizens review board. I'll be honest about it. I don't know many cops who like it. I'm one of the few who probably thinks we should have it, because I truly don't believe that it stops there. Because if there is a problem with a cover up from within, that's where the problem is, the cover up from within. I'm not saying that's what's going on necessarily right now, but it has happened in the past. And I would challenge anyone here to say that they have not heard of an officer being taken care of. Okay, let's not even go with that one. But to address your concern, Julius, I think that's where the Citizens Review Board might come to play, where an individual could go to that review board and at least have their thing put to paper and not be so fearful of retaliation or repercussions.
I would agree. Then that board can follow up instead of the pressure being on that citizen. Okay.
All righty. Anything else on our police use of force? Our policy or anything else? Before we go on to, I was going to go with the appointed police chief. appointed versus elected police chief. And I would like to hear from, Chief, you're not gonna be affected, Chief Lees, you're not gonna be affected by this if this ever comes to pass. You'll be long retired. But what is your opinion about an elected police chief versus an appointed police chief? I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Through the chair, and I know all of you fairly well, and I think likewise. And I honestly don't know if that's a good idea, and for a couple reasons. First of all, again, Councilwoman Davis and again Councilman Hughes, we've all seen police departments that have a civil service chief. And, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, that's where essentially you test against other applicants for the chief's position. And when you are awarded it, it is the same as one of our ranking officers. You have all the protections of civil service and cannot be removed, basically, other than for the reasons that somebody else could be basically fired. And essentially that chief is in for eternity at that point. I don't know that there was a time when I thought that was a great thing because it protected the chief and gave him the ability to act without being concerned of repercussions from politicians or others. What I've come to find out, again, through my own experience and dealing with, again, my own experience plus what I've seen with others is that I think that the system as is, where the chief is appointed by the administrator of the city, whether it's a mayor or let's say an administrator for, again, another political entity, because I think there has to be a shared philosophy between the mayor and the police chief, as well as other department heads, on the direction that city should be taking. Otherwise, if everybody's running for office independently, I think it kind of fractionalizes the responses that you're going to get, and you would have people that could get entrenched in basically turf battles and disagreements with each other, and it would keep that entity from moving forward, whether it be the city or again another political entity. I think that an elected chief would be a problem. The other thing is, frankly, from my position, I wouldn't want to go out and have to start looking to get people, as far as like fundraisers or financial backing, because I think that just, lends itself potentially to corruption. You do have an elected law enforcement official in each county has a sheriff. And again, the two sheriffs I know the best are Sheriff Monroe and Sheriff Green here in Mahoning County. I think they do a great job, but I know neither one of them look forward to that aspect of the job where, it involves that fundraising. And I just think it would add something that doesn't need to be there. And like I said, I really think that where you're in a position like this, particularly with a city, village, small town, that police chief and whoever the administrator is, whether it's a mayor or other person, there needs to be a shared philosophy on how you're going to move forward. And like I said, I think that applies to all the department heads.
Thank you, Chief. I, of course, believe that the citizens of Youngstown should be just like the citizens of Mahoning County and be able to vote their chief law enforcement officer in. How he raises his money is up to him. I don't see it as a corrupting factor that they have to have fundraisers. I look at Sheriff Green, and I have the utmost faith in him. And I know that's not what Robin was getting at, so I'm not even giving that one. But I will be emailing to all members of City Council and to our clerks so that it can be posted onto the website, the different police departments here in Ohio and in other parts of the country where the police chiefs are indeed, as Chief Lees has said, some are elected and chiefs are appointed. And our Warren Police Chief is civil service. And there are entire parts of the country where the electing of the police chief is commonplace. And there are a lot of other parts of the country where they are civil service. So there's pros and cons to each of them. But I say one thing about it is that if the person is elected, they reside here in Youngstown, which to me is the absolute best message to send to the citizens of Youngstown. So I will be emailing that to you if anyone has any other questions. And like I said, I'll post it. I'll make sure Valencia gets it to you and that it gets posted on the website, the list that I prepared. That's through my research of departments where the chiefs were civil service, as the chief has mentioned, and those that are elected, and those who had elected and have now done away with elected and made them appointed. As the chief knows, Youngstown long ago had a town marshal a city marshal, the equivalent of the police chief, who was elected.
If I could, through the chair.
Go ahead, Jim.
I understand. I get 20 seconds is all I have about elected and non-elected.
Go ahead, Jim.
I think what Chief Lees has said has some merit to it, you know. Mm-hmm. But if the sheriffs were appointed, you know, and they served at the whims of commissioners or administrator or whoever, as it is in, I think, Cuyahoga County, they have an appointed sheriff, or they did somewhere up in that area. The whole point still being is that they have somebody to answer. They're not doing the law. The people that, whether civil service or elected, you know, they don't have a boss they got to check with before they arrest somebody, before something this go on and that go on. If you look in Youngstown, you know, and when we had years ago, you know, we had corruption or so-called whatever they were that people, it was very, very few times that the police department even investigate those things, you know, of any significance. But my point is that's because somebody was, and the chief was answering to someone else. He don't answer to the law. He don't answer to his profession all the time. Now, I'm not saying it's a Chief Lees. You know, I do know him, as he says, you know, and Robin, this is not you. It's not a conversation about you. But they do have to answer. They have to answer to the mayor who appoints them, and they restrict it. I was a police chief, and I know that I was ordered by the mayor at times to do this, to discipline somebody, to arrest, to actually arrest someone. You know, I was being pushed to do that through the mayor's office as the police chief. You know, so is this right or is this wrong? You know, it shouldn't be an influence, but it is. You know, and you know, I've been on many investigations, and you know, I said, well, my mayor wants to come to the pre-briefing. Oh no, the feds wouldn't even have it, you know, because but you know, they asked to come. They want to be a part of, not to be crooks, but these are the things you have to be independent from, you know, and so long as you got a chief is tied to another person, you also tied to the other person's integrity, the other person's, you know, whatever, and that's how it's always going to be. So the point and the value of saying that you're elected or civil service is that you're not tethered to anything. You're independent, and you can go by your own elected integrity, you know, and you're elected. You ain't being pushed. Now, if any chiefs say that they're not trying to be influenced by somebody who controls their paycheck, any law director that's getting appointed says he don't have to answer to, he goes independently. No, I don't think we're going to be totally honest or genuine for sure, but I'm not saying that happens here. But the fact of it is, if you control the pay, you control the job, you actually control what they do, for the most part, and not here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Hughes. Chief, I'm gonna move on to the next item and it's about the take-home cars. If no one has any other questions about that, and we can have a discussion further at our next safety meeting on this topic of the elected versus appointed, etc. If anyone's interested. Unfinished business, it was dealing with the take-home cars. And Chief, I got the list from Captain Simon. And I also have the legislation that we had involved. And I just need you to explain to me, all these officers, this is for Chief Lees. Chief Lees, all these officers who are in traffic, cops, etc., are all their cars take-home cars?
Through the chair, the list you have are all cars that go home.
Okay. What is the criteria? Why do they take them home?
It's actually, there's a small variety of reasons. You'll see up in the left-hand corner, contractual, which indicates that, again, by contract, they have the right to take the car home.
Let me stop you, Chief. Let's go, not the contractual, because those are individuals who reside inside the city who are turned supervisors, I believe.
Correct.
So these other ones are the ones that, if they don't live inside the city and they're taking home cars, I'd like to know why.
Okay, generally, other than, again, the canine people, these are folks who are on call and or in some cases with the community police, they live in the city and they have a car that we basically allow them to take home to the neighborhood.
Okay, so the canine officers live in the city and they are on call.
The canine officers do not live in the city. I don't know who does and who doesn't offhand. I'm not sure. I think 2 of them do, maybe 2 of them don't. But the canine officers take the cars home because they have the dogs.
Because of the dogs. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And let's go back up here then to the vice and task force. Can we go through those?
Sure.
Are they city vehicles?
They are city vehicles. That's correct.
Okay. And so those who are in, because I see here Malik, is he still part of Vice or as well?
Malik is one of the crisis negotiators for yes. Well,
Okay.
actually, it's beyond CIT. He's actually a negotiator for the SWAT team. He's a
Okay.
crisis. So he's on call for that.
Okay. Let's start with Hughes.
Hughes is assigned to the Vice Squad. He's also a member of the SWAT team.
Okay. Are all the members of Vice on the SWAT team?
No.
Okay, then let's go
Bigowski and Rivers are not SWAT team members. Welsh is not a SWAT team member. They live in the city.
Are they all supervisors?
No, they're not.
Contractually, it's supervisors. Why were our patrol officers assigned a take-home car?
Through the Vice Squad, they have a car assigned to them for their day-to-day duties between going to the court prosecutor's office and, again, making their daily rounds. Living in the city, we allow them to take the cars home because, again, typically they have a law enforcement profile to them. And we feel that they have a positive impact in the neighborhood. One of the other reasons that I think is reasonable for them to take the cars home is that the cars are better cared for and get the attention that they would not otherwise get if they were just parked in a lot for the day. The other thing is, in some of these cases, particularly the Vice Squad, there is limited parking, and that becomes an issue.
Okay. Geraci, Burnage, and Slattery. Slattery's a lieutenant.
Slattery's a lieutenant. Geraci and Burnage are both SWAT team members. And I might note that Rich is about to retire in the next month or two, as well as Dave Wilson. And they're, again, SWAT team call out. Wilson is a negotiator. Rich is an operator. I don't plan on restaffing those positions. I'm going to reduce our commitments there a little bit. So those will essentially be taken off the roster here and not replaced.
So Geraci, and I know Dave was retiring, and you said Geraci's retiring?
Correct. He should be going, I believe it's in August as well.
And so those cars will no longer be taken home by anyone?
Correct.
Okay. And the other, there's SWAT. How often do they get called out for SWAT? Do they get called out for SWAT?
Yes, they get called out. I wouldn't say frequently, but it's kind of a somewhat regular occurrence. The team covers the entire county plus Trumbull, and they've had regular activations. So to answer your question, yes.
So our SWAT team is a part of a county-wide SWAT team?
We really don't maintain a SWAT team within YPD anymore. They are all members of the task force SWAT team. So we have probably a larger participation than most of the other agencies, but typically we're the biggest user of the team as well. The other thing is that the officers that we have on the SWAT team will double as officers that do the forced entries and raids with the Vice Squad. So they're kind of a dual purpose.
Okay, so if I have that right, Slattery, Burnage, and Hughes are members of the SWAT team. Geraci and Dave Wilson are leaving. Welch, Rivers, and Bogowski are not members of the SWAT team. But they live in the, but they do live in the city.
Correct.
Okay. I have a problem when our vehicles are going outside the city, because it doesn't benefit us. I'll just be honest about it. And so going down below, Chief,
yes.
Let's review Mosca, Fields, Kelly, Conjimmy, Latch, Staley, and Short. What's the reason for them having taken the cars?
Mosca is assigned to the DEA task force, and they actually paid for the vehicle, but it is on our roster. It's our vehicle. It will, when that car is replaced, the vehicle that Mosca is driving will become part of our fleet. So we'll kind of inherit it, if you will.
Okay.
The remainder of these guys, this is all SWAT here. Fields, Kelly, Conjemmy, Latch, Staley, and Short are all SWAT team members.
So we have 9 who are SWAT.
Let's see, 1, 2. That would be correct.
Are they full-time with them, or are they with something else as well?
No, actually, they all have other assignments. Mostella, Fields, Kelly, Conjemmy, Latch, Staley, and Short. Well, let me take that back. Staley is not, but all the other ones are on patrol division assignments. Staley is in the Vice Squad.
Okay, so we have Latch, Short, Latch, Conjimmy, Kelly, Fields. They are on patrol division. Is Fields a sergeant?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Okay, next going down to, over to the traffic division. I apologize. And if anyone has questions, just raise your hand.
Can I
Jim?
just comment, question?
Yes, Jim?
Where they are and what they're doing, when the ordinance was drafted, it lists, the assignments, and it gave the responsibility for the cars. If what the ordinance is wrong, if it's not up to date, I have no problems re-looking at it, and seeing back and forth. But I think that's what we should be talking about. The ordinance gives the different position, the different abilities to take a car in or outside the city, for the positions that are listed. It's kind of finite in that, and I'm just thinking that, where's the exception of this is what the chief's doing. He has an abundance of exceptions to what the ordinance gives him authority to do. He's working outside the ordinance. And my concerns here is that we're going down one after another. He has, he needs to give us a report where the person, how they fit the ordinance and what destination that they fit on the ordinance. And if he gave us a list that said that, and we can really see, and if it says 2 peoples or 3 in this unit or 3 for that, but it was the police department who gave this information that generated that ordinance, and it was agreed upon then by council. And so it's been changed. Clearly it's been changed. What I would think that we would be concerned with, he needs to come back up on the ordinance, regardless of where they are at and everything else. Those individuals should be matching the ordinance, and those are the only people who should have a car. The only ones that should have a car 24 hours. The only ones who take a car outside the city. And if he wants to go beyond the ordinance, then they need to come back to us to change.
Okay.
That's what I think.
All right. Lauren?
Is the ordinance specific to the police department and then each department has its own version of that ordinance for their take-home vehicles? Or is it one ordinance that covers the city as a whole? I don't think.
Go ahead, Jim.
It's specific to the police department as well as other departments, but it spells out the specific part that the police department would do. And what it is, it tells you can't do it. You can't give, he can't give as many cars privileges, individuals privileges, they take them outside the city. We said no. And so my thing is that if he wants to do that, what should have happened, he should have come back and we should have been trying to change to agree with him in the form of an ordinance. But we passed a law that says this is what it's gonna be. That's all I'm saying.
As a follow-up, if the ordinance applies to other departments too, then we probably need to look across the board. But secondly, is there anything in any of the union contracts do they negotiate at all anything about take-home vehicles as part of their contract separately?
Well, I've looked at our safety forces contract because that's where I'm at. Within our safety force contract, it does have a provision that supervisors who live within the city, term supervisors who live in the city, are entitled to a take-home car.
So it's in line with the ordinance then that we have. Nothing's one isn't overriding the other.
Right, it's not out of whack. It's not wonky. That part's not wonky. And I understand what Councilman Hughes is saying, but I was just wanting to go through it, I just want to hear what the criteria was for Chief Lee's position before we go forward with talking about the legislation, the law that is in place, which is what Councilman Hughes is talking about. Correct?
Yeah, I was just trying to do it today, though,
Okay. Kim.
Really?
Okay. Well, we'll speed this up then real quick. Okay, Chief Hughes, Chief, please tell me why Ross, Schiffauer, Booking, and Lee in traffic. Why all four of them have a take-home car?
Correct. They're all on call for the traffic investigations.
Okay, and what's the frequency in which they get called out? When's the last time? I know we had a fatality recently.
Yeah, they're called out for all fatalities or accidents with serious injury that may result in a fatality, and as well as usually any city vehicles or police vehicles involved in traffic accidents.
Okay, and when they're on, are they all on call out at the same time?
I think 3 of them are on call at any given time.
3 of them are. And do they get call out pay?
Yes, they do.
We got to address that one. Okay, going on to the community policing, Patton and Melvin Johnson.
Correct.
Why?
Oh, they both live in the city, and again, the car in the neighborhood I don't think is a bad thing. And again, we're dealing with the parking issues around the community police station down there on Mahoning Avenue.
Okay, and like I said, I do agree that a marked take-home car does wonders for the neighborhood. But Melvin Johnson doesn't fall within the category that Councilman Hughes is talking about. And going on to, real quickly, Chief, going down to internal affairs in your office. Skipping over you, let's go with the Mercer, Bernie, Bodner, Butler, Davis, and Simon.
Okay, Captain Mercer has responsibility for the 911 center and has been called out on a fairly frequent basis for a variety of issues connected to that. Guy Burney, we've always allowed him to take his vehicle home, given the nature of what he does on a day-to-day basis. Officer Bodner is on call for the SWAT team, as well as traffic right now has 2 people off, so he's doubling in an on-call capacity for them. Butler and Carl Davis are internal affairs, and Captain Simon is the fiscal officer and is a shooting team member.
Okay. Butler and Davis are internal affairs, and I mean I'm not following. What is the rationale to say because they're in internal affairs they need a take-home car that goes outside the city? What's the rationale?
The rationale is that they are also shooting team members, and they are on call for internal affairs matters that come up.
Okay, they're on call and they're the shooting team, and that they rarely get called out. And frankly, I'm at a loss to say if they need a car, go get the car from downtown instead of always having the car at home outside the city. But thank you I just want to know your criteria for your rationale for ignoring the legislation. Detective Division, Captain Blackburn is Chief of Detectives. I understand that one. And he's on continuous call?
That's correct.
Okay, could you go through the rest of these officers who are in the Detective Division?
Okay, it would be easier for me to just say who is not potentially on an on-call basis. Sergeant Carfolo and Jose Morales Jr. are the only 2 that are not assigned to one of the homicide teams. The remainder are assigned to homicide teams, and or it's the lieutenant or captain of the squad.
Okay. FISU.
They are on call for, again, the crimes that would affect them, the most serious, obviously, being rape and offenses against the family. for call out as well.
Okay. When was the last time they were called out?
I want to say within the last 2 weeks.
Who?
A lot of the call outs that they get are typically not newsworthy, but they need to go out to the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not as high profile as the detectives for the call outs.
I'm not asking about that, Chief, honestly. I'm not understanding why we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in that unit. They're on call, but the number of times that they're called out doesn't even remotely, merit they have a permanent take-home call. I mean, it's just not. But I just want to get it down on the record, about the philosophy on these take-home cars. Chief, why do you want to have so many take-home cars? I'm not, and I mean, in all honesty, you know that when council passed that legislation, the idea was to minimize and reduce the number of take-home cars. But this is bloated.
Okay. Again, there's a rotating on-call for that family services unit, and some of the officers within the unit live in the city as well. So it's a combination there.
Okay. Did you have any? You're gone. I don't know if you. Do you know you're off camera? Okay. Chief, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm in agreement with Councilman Hughes. We do have this ordinance. City Council passed it, and you need to be in compliance with what City Council passed. I'm going to take this up with our law director and with the mayor. I'm putting it right out here for everyone to understand that this is just a flagrant violation of what the previous council passed, and it is still that which is binding. And the whim of assigning cars to people, that's just intolerable. Those are city dollars, and those are all city dollars that are floating outside of our city. So I'm going to take this up with the mayor and with the law director and with my other council members, because somewhere along the line, you have got to come to compliance with this. You cannot be above the law City Council passed. Now, does anyone else have any comments or questions on this? Because everybody's dark, okay? And that's where I'm leaving this at, which is, if I gotta obey the law, we're gonna all obey the law. Any other questions for the chief on this topic? And we'll figure out a way that makes this come into compliance. No other questions? I'm sorry?
I would just say I agree.
Okay, Julius. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? I need our committee to come on camera.
I'm on. What do you mean come on camera?
You're not on camera.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we have now discussed the thing about the take-home cars. Are there any other questions from the committee or from the other members of council in reference to these take-home cars? Okay, if not, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Meeting's adjourned at 5:32, and I do apologize for running over.